In this video, we're going to create our very first graphical user interface application. For the purposes of this video, all we're going to do is create a very simple Java application that displays a window, and we'll use this code then to expand on that and build in different user interface components later on. So to begin with, we're going to start off with a Java program that looks exactly the same as every other Java program we've written so far. We have a class for our program, and this is called week 10 example 1. We then have our main method as we normally have, and inside the main method I'm just going to do some simple output just to show where we are in the program's execution. So we should see the output. We are here in the main method when I run this Java program. So I'm going to compile the Java program and then run the Java program. And you'll see the output that we get is as normal. We get the output. We are here in the main method. So what if I wanted to create a graphical user interface using this program? Well, there's a number of things that I need to do. First of all, I'm going to have to import a number of libraries that contain all the graphical user interface components that I need to use. So I'm going to modify my very basic example here, and the first thing I'm going to do is write a couple of import statements. So I'm going to import java.awt.star. The AWT packages basically contain lots of classes for creating user interface or graphical user interface components, and it allows us to draw on the screen and so on. So without going into too much detail, that's basically what it does. It just allows us to create user interfaces. The next import that I need to do is java.awt.event.star, and we will use this part of the AWT library for handling user interface events. So every time the user clicks on a button or interacts with the user interface in some shape or form, we'll need to capture events. We'll do a little bit more on this later on, but for the moment we just need that import at the top of our program. And finally, I'm going to import javax.swing.star. Now the javax.swing package is a package that contains all of the user interface components like buttons and text boxes and so on. So we have these basic graphical user interface components like text fields, like a button, like a label, a list, checkboxes, all of these things that you would be familiar with seeing in graphical user interfaces. We have kind of some extended components as well that you might be familiar with, like list boxes with sliders or scroll bars, file open dialogues or file choosers, progress bars, tool tips, kind of tables, hierarchical structures, split panes, tabs, all of these kind of user interface components that you're used to seeing when you use a Windows based application. All of these things are contained within the Swing library, and the idea is that these components should look the same or behave the same across different platforms. So if you're running a Java application on Windows, on a Mac, on a Linux machine, they should all kind of look the same, and that's what the Swing library allows us to do. So if we go back to our little piece of code here, once we've imported these packages, we can start to use them. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is to take my class, so my week 10 example 1 class, and I'm going to get this class to extend something called a JFrame. Okay, So we'll come across this extends keyword later on, but basically what this is going to do is it's going to allow my class week 10 example 1 to extend all the functionality of a JFrame. Now a JFrame is a basic window in Java. So when you see a window that contains all the graphical user interface components and you can resize the window and close it and so on, that is a JFrame. So what I want to do is basically create a very simple JFrame window. So that's the first thing I need to do, the first change in the code where I have my simple example. I need to get this class to extend the JFrame component. The next thing that I'm going to do is down in the main method. I'm going to leave my little system out println here, but I'm going to add to my main method. And I'm going to add a couple of lines of code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object. So I'm going to say week 10 example 1, that's the name of my class, okay? So week 10 example 1, and I have it up here, week 10 example 1, that's the name of this class. And remember, that's extending all the functionality of a JFrame window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object. So I'm going to say week 10 example 1, and then I'm going to call the object my window, and it's going to be a new week 10 example 1. So we've come across this before in some of the examples where we created a random number generator or so on, or some new file objects to be able to handle text files or binary files. So this is basically the same thing, but you'll notice that I'm creating an object called week 10 example 1, or the object that I'm creating is my window, and it's of the type week 10 example 1. So I'm going to create that object, which is going to basically create a new JFrame object for me. And then what I'm going to do is, so let me comment this, so I'm going to create my window, let's get the spelling right here, my window object from week 10 example 1. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to call some methods on that object, on the my window object. So there's some initial things that I can do, like when I create a window I want to have an initial size for the window, so I'm going to do that. And in order to do that, I'm just going to say set the initial size for the window, and to do that I'm going to say my window dot set size. So there's a set size method that is part of the JFrame class, and I'm going to set the initial size of the window to 400 pixels by 400 pixels and leave it at that. And then the next thing I'm going to do, and this is important, I need to show the window, because by default the window will not appear unless I call the show method. So I'm going to say my window dot show. Okay, so what have we done? We've included the libraries that we need, the AWT and the Java X.Swing libraries. We've taken our basic class and we've told it that it extends the functionality of the JFrame class, and this JFrame is a window. The next thing that we've done is down in our main method we've created an object of that type, week 10 example 1. So remember, week 10 example 1 extends the JFrame, and the object that we're creating is my window. And then we just call the set size on my window, give it an initial size, and call the show so that we can actually see the window. So let's compile and run this and see what happens. And there we go. We've got a window, and it has an initial size of 400 by 400. We can resize the window. It's got the usual kind of window controls: close the window, minimize the window, increase the size of the window. I can get it to disappear altogether as well. And you'll see that as part of the window we get a kind of default menu structure. This is what it looks like on a Mac. It might look slightly different on Windows, but to quit the window or to exit the window, we can see a little quit option here. So if I quit out of this, it will close the window, and that's it. So that is how you create a very simple graphical user interface that's just a simple JFrame window. There's nothing else in the window, it's just an empty window. And in the next few examples we'll see how we can add components into that window to build up a more complex user interface.